She had always felt invisible. Every morning she woke up to the same gray walls of her small apartment, the same dim light seeping through the worn-out curtains, and the same quiet loneliness that had become a part of her life. She had learned to move through the world quietly, to speak softly, to avoid drawing attention because attention often brought disappointment. Working at the small cafe on the corner of the busy street had been her lifeline, not because it brought excitement or joy, but because it gave her a sense of purpose, however small. She took pride in her work even if no one noticed. She cleaned tables, refilled coffee cups, and smiled at customers who rarely returned the gesture. Most people didn't pay attention to the staff at the cafe. They were polite at best, dismissive at worst. She had become accustomed to nods that weren't returned, to customers who spoke to her as if she weren't really there. Some days, the weight of being invisible pressed down on her so heavily that she could hardly breathe. She would stand behind the counter, hands moving automatically, heart heavy with the ache of being overlooked. She wondered if anyone would notice if she suddenly stopped existing, if her absence would even matter. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon, and the cafe was unusually crowded. The air was thick with the smell of wet coats, hot coffee, and baked pastries. She moved quickly between tables, balancing trays loaded with steaming cups and plates. Her mind was a blur of orders, names, and customer complaints. She barely noticed the man who walked in until he approached the counter. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit that made him stand out even in the busy crowd. His presence seemed to command the space around him without any effort. She served many people every day, but there was something about him that felt different. He wasn't rushing, wasn't distracted by his phone, didn't glance at the menu with impatience. He simply waited calmly as if he had all the time in the world. She handed him his coffee, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves she didn't understand. "Here's your cappuccino," she said, expecting the usual indifferent nod or a hurried thank you. But instead he looked at her, directly into her eyes, and spoke. His words were simple, but they hit her like a ray of sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. He said something kind, something about how smoothly she was managing the rush. She blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. No one ever complimented her work, not like this. She had become used to the sound of her own voice going unheard, her efforts unnoticed. But now someone had seen her, really seen her, and acknowledged her skill. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if someone had opened a door to a room she had thought was forever locked. She thanked him softly, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. The man nodded politely and sat at a small table near the window. She returned to her work, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying his words over and over. For the first time that day, she felt a spark of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, she mattered. The hours passed in a blur. She continued serving customers, cleaning up spills, and refilling drinks. But she couldn't shake the memory of the man's kind words. Every time she glanced at the window, she saw him sitting there, reading a newspaper, calmly observing the world outside. There was something in his demeanor that was reassuring, something that made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt before. She wondered who he was, why he had taken the time to speak to her, and if he would ever notice her again. The questions swirled in her mind, but she didn't have time to dwell on them. The cafe was busy and she had work to do. As the rain continued to fall outside, she found herself stealing glances at him whenever she could. She noticed the way he sipped his coffee slowly, the way his eyes followed the people passing by, and the faint smile that appeared when he looked at something that amused him. She realized she was curious about him, not in a romantic way, but in a way that made her feel alive. It had been a long time since anyone had sparked her interest simply by being kind and present. She wondered if he came to this cafe often or if today was a rare visit. The thought that he might never return made her chest tighten. Finally, the rush began to subside and the cafe emptied. She wiped down the counters, swept the floors, and stacked the chairs on the tables, moving mechanically while her mind wandered back to him. He had left a small tip on the table along with a note. She picked it up with trembling hands and unfolded it. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that she could hardly comprehend. He had thanked her again, mentioning how rare it was to meet someone who handled the day with such calm and grace. She read the note multiple times, each time feeling a strange mixture of disbelief and joy. Someone had not only noticed her, but they had taken the time to express it in words that felt genuine and heartfelt. That evening, she walked home slowly, letting the rain wash over her as she thought about the encounter. For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of excitement for the future. She realized that kindness, even from a stranger, had the power to change the way she saw herself. She thought about the long days she had spent feeling invisible, and she felt a quiet determination stirring within her. Maybe she didn't have to be invisible anymore. Maybe she could start believing that she deserved to be seen and appreciated. As she reached her apartment, she placed the note on her small kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. It was a simple piece of paper with a few words, but it felt like a treasure. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, listening to the rain patter against the glass. She replayed every moment of the encounter in her mind, from the way he had looked at her to the calm, genuine tone of his voice. She realized that it wasn't just what he said, but how he said it, that had touched her so deeply. There was a warmth and sincerity that she hadn't felt in years, a reminder that even in a world full of indifference, moments of genuine connection still existed. That night, she went to bed with a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She dreamed of possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider, of a life where she could be seen, valued, and heard. She didn't know if she would ever see him again, but for the first time she allowed herself to hope. She understood that life was unpredictable, full of surprises that could come from the most unexpected places, and maybe, just maybe, this small act of kindness was the beginning of something that could change everything. The next morning, she woke up feeling lighter. The gray walls of her apartment didn't seem quite as dull. The dim light through the curtains seemed a little warmer, and the loneliness that had once felt so heavy was tempered by the memory of his words. She got ready for work with a small smile, carefully choosing her outfit, tying her hair back neatly and walking out the door with a sense of purpose. She stepped into the bustling streets, the sound of rain still lingering on the pavement, and headed toward the cafe, carrying with her a sense of hope and anticipation that she hadn't felt in years. She didn't know what the day would bring, but she knew that the world could be kinder than she had imagined, and that sometimes even the smallest act of noticing someone could leave a mark that lasted far longer than anyone could predict. She arrived at the cafe and took her place behind the counter, moving through her tasks with the same care and attention she always did, but now with a new lightness in her step. The familiar faces of the regular customers greeted her, some with polite nods, others with small smiles. She returned their gestures, but her mind kept wandering back to the man in the suit, wondering if today he might return. She set up the tables, polished the counters, and refilled the coffee machine, each task grounding her in the rhythm of her day while her heart hummed with quiet excitement. Hours passed, and she served customer after customer, yet her mind remained alert for any sign of him. Every entrance through the cafe door made her heart skip a beat. Each shadow that passed the window caught her attention. She tried to focus on her work, reminding herself to stay calm, but the memory of his kind words continued to linger, lifting her spirits and giving her a sense of purpose beyond the usual routine. She realized that sometimes being noticed wasn't about grand gestures or loud praise. It was about the simple, genuine acknowledgement of one's presence, and that acknowledgement could change a life. As the afternoon sun began to peek through the clouds, casting a warm glow across the cafe, she noticed him walking in again. Her heart leapt and she felt a rush of nerves and excitement. He approached the counter with the same calm demeanor, and this time she didn't need to brace herself. She greeted him with a smile and he returned it, his eyes conveying a sense of familiarity and kindness that made her feel unexpectedly seen. He ordered his coffee and chose a seat by the window, just like the day before. She carried his cup to him, and as she did, he spoke again, his voice gentle and sincere. He thanked her for her work, complimenting her patience and composure during the busy day. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a reassurance that the connection from the previous day was real, and that it wasn't just a fleeting moment. She returned to her tasks with renewed energy, each interaction with customers feeling lighter and more meaningful. The man's presence had a subtle effect on the cafe, a quiet influence that seemed to elevate the mood of the room. She moved through the space with a newfound confidence, aware that someone had seen her, truly seen her, and had chosen to recognize her efforts. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of belonging, a reminder that even in a world that often overlooked her, she could make a difference in her own small way. As the day drew to a close, she cleaned the last tables, stacked the chairs, and took a moment to breathe. She glanced toward the window where he was still seated, and felt a quiet sense of anticipation for what might come next. She realized that the next morning, she woke with a sense of curiosity that hadn't been there before. She replayed the events of the previous day in her mind, especially the way he had spoken to her with genuine kindness. It was hard to believe that someone like him, someone so confident and composed, could notice someone like her, someone who usually went unnoticed. She made herself a simple breakfast and sat by the window, watching the city slowly come to life. The thought that he might return to the cafe that day made her heart beat a little faster. She couldn't explain why, but she felt a strange connection, a feeling that something important might be about to happen. She arrived at the cafe early, as usual, and started preparing for the busy day ahead. The aroma of freshly baked pastries and brewed coffee filled the air. She organized the tables, polished the counters, and made sure everything was ready. Her co-workers greeted her with the usual polite nods and casual small talk. She smiled back, but her mind kept drifting to him. She wondered if he had come back for more coffee or if it was just a coincidence that he appeared again. The possibilities ran through her mind, making the morning feel lighter and more hopeful than any morning in a long time. By mid-morning, the cafe was bustling with the usual crowd. She moved between tables efficiently, taking orders, serving drinks, and keeping the rhythm of the cafe smooth. And then she saw him, walking in as if he belonged there with the same calm and confident demeanor. Her chest tightened and she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He greeted her with a smile and she returned it, trying to steady her voice as she took his order. He asked for the same cappuccino as before and chose the table by the window once more. She carried the cup to him, and for a brief moment their eyes met, and she felt a silent understanding pass between them. He began to visit regularly, always sitting quietly, observing the cafe, but always acknowledging her in small, meaningful ways. He would ask how her day was going, sometimes sharing a few words of encouragement or gentle compliments. She found herself looking forward to these moments, the small exchanges that made her feel seen and appreciated. She began to notice the little things about him, the way he adjusted his tie, the thoughtful pauses before he spoke, the kindness in his eyes. She realized that his attention wasn't fleeting or superficial. It was sincere, and it touched her deeply. As the days passed, she began to open up to him more. She shared small details about her life, the dreams she had once had and the struggles she faced. He listened patiently, never interrupting or judging. His presence became a comforting anchor in her otherwise monotonous life. She found herself smiling more, laughing more easily, and feeling a sense of confidence she hadn't experienced in years. The act of being listened to, of having her words acknowledged and valued, began to transform her perception of herself. One afternoon, as they spoke about her favorite books and the quiet hobbies she enjoyed, he mentioned his own experiences, the long hours, the responsibilities, and the pressure that came with his position. She listened with fascination, realizing that despite his wealth and status, he faced challenges and loneliness similar to her own, though on a different scale. She found it surprising that someone with so much could still be so grounded and approachable. It made her trust him more, and she began to feel that their conversations were more than just chance encounters. They were genuine connections forming between two people from very different worlds. With each visit, she noticed a subtle shift in her life. She began to carry herself differently, walking with a little more confidence, speaking with a little more clarity. Her coworkers started to notice the change too, commenting on her brighter demeanor and her renewed energy. Even the regular customers seemed to respond to her differently, as if the quiet light within her had become visible. She realized that being seen and appreciated had the power to influence not only her mood but also her entire outlook on life. The small kindness he offered had created ripples that reached far beyond the moments they shared in the cafe. There were moments when she doubted herself, when she wondered if his attention was genuine or if she was reading too much into a kind gesture, but each time he proved otherwise. He remembered small details she had mentioned, acknowledged her efforts, and treated her with a respect that felt rare and precious. She began to understand that kindness, when genuine, could have a profound impact. It wasn't about wealth or power. It was about seeing someone for who they truly were and valuing them in that moment. One rainy afternoon, when the cafe was quieter than usual, He invited her to join him for a brief walk outside. Hesitant at first, she agreed, curious about what he wanted to share. Stepping into the crisp, rain-scented air, she felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. They walked slowly, talking about life, their dreams, and the small joys that often went unnoticed. He spoke of the challenges he had faced, the loneliness that sometimes accompanied success, and the moments that had shaped his perspective on life. She shared her own fears, her hopes, and the longings she had kept hidden. In that quiet, shared space, she felt a profound sense of connection, a reminder that human beings could find understanding and empathy in the most unexpected places. The conversation left her feeling lighter, as if a weight she hadn't fully recognized had been lifted. She realized that her life didn't have to be confined to the boundaries she had set for herself. She could dream again, imagine a future filled with possibilities, and believe that she was capable of achieving more than she had allowed herself to think. The encounter opened a door to a world where kindness and understanding were not rare, but powerful forces that could change the course of a person's life. Over the next few weeks, their interactions continued to grow. He didn't impose his presence or make grand gestures. Instead, he offered steady support and genuine interest. She found herself anticipating his visits, preparing for them with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Each exchange left her feeling valued, and she began to take small steps to improve her own life. She pursued hobbies she had set aside, took pride in her work, and allowed herself to believe in her own worth. The confidence that had been missing for so long started to take root, nurtured by the simple but powerful act of being seen and acknowledged. She also began to notice the effect he had on the cafe itself. Other customers seemed to sense the warmth he brought with him, and even her coworkers began to smile more and treat each other with a little more patience. The environment, once filled with routine and occasional tension, felt lighter, more welcoming. She realized that the impact of one kind person could extend far beyond their immediate actions, influencing the people around them in subtle but meaningful ways. The experience taught her that kindness was not just a personal gift, but a ripple that could touch many lives. One evening, after the cafe had closed, she sat by the window with a cup of tea, reflecting on the changes that had occurred in her life. She thought about the days when she had felt invisible, the long hours spent wondering if anyone would ever notice her, and the quiet despair that had accompanied that feeling. Now she felt a sense of hope and possibility that was entirely new. She understood that the small moments of connection, the brief exchanges of genuine kindness, could have a lasting effect on a person's heart and mind. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about seeing someone and acknowledging their presence in a meaningful way. The realization inspired her to carry the lesson forward. She began to treat others with the same care and attention that had been shown to her, noticing small details, offering kind words, and showing appreciation for the efforts of those around her. She discovered that the act of seeing and valuing others brought a sense of fulfillment that was deeply rewarding. The kindness she had received had not only transformed her perception of herself, but had also given her the tools to impact the lives of others positively. As she walked home that night, the city lights reflecting off the wet streets, she felt a quiet sense of gratitude. She didn't know what the future held, or if he would continue to visit the cafe, but she understood that her life had already changed. The simple act of being noticed, the brief moments of genuine connection, had ignited a spark within her that could not be extinguished. She felt stronger, more confident, and more capable of facing the world with an open heart. The journey of being seen had begun, and with it came the realization that even in a world that often overlooked the quiet and the lonely, kindness had the power to transform lives in ways that were profound and lasting. Weeks passed, and her life slowly began to shift in ways she had never expected. The cafe, once a place she endured each day with quiet resignation, had become a place of anticipation and subtle joy. She looked forward to the mornings not only for the routine of her work, but for the possibility of seeing him again. The businessman's visits were now a comforting constant, something she could rely on in a world that often seemed indifferent. His presence was not just a curiosity anymore. It was a gentle reminder that kindness existed even in unexpected places. She noticed small changes in herself. She smiled more easily at customers, spoke with a confidence that had been missing for years, and felt a lightness in her chest that made the long hours feel less burdensome. Each time she exchanged words with him, the simple acknowledgement of her efforts seemed to lift the weight she had carried for so long. She began to understand that being seen was not just about recognition. It was about feeling valued and respected, something she had rarely experienced in her life. One afternoon, as she was serving coffee to a regular customer, she caught sight of him entering the cafe. Her heart skipped a beat, and she felt a rush of excitement mixed with nervous anticipation. He greeted her with the familiar calm smile, and she returned it, feeling the warmth spread through her. He sat at the table by the window once more, and she brought his cappuccino, noticing the careful attention he paid to the steam rising from the cup. It was a small detail, but it made her feel seen, as if he had noticed even the tiniest parts of the world around him, including her. Their conversations had grown deeper over time. He asked about her dreams, the passions she had set aside, and the challenges she had faced. She shared pieces of herself she had kept hidden for years, and he listened with patience and understanding. She discovered that he wasn't just kind in words, but in actions, offering small gestures that made her feel respected and valued. It wasn't about grand displays or flashy gifts. It was about consistent attention and genuine interest, something that touched her heart profoundly. She found herself thinking about him often, wondering about the life he led outside the cafe. There was a sense of mystery about him, but it was not intimidating. Instead, it sparked curiosity and admiration. She realized that his kindness was rooted in his understanding of human connection, something that money and status alone could not buy. He had experienced challenges, loneliness, and the pressures of responsibility, yet he remained grounded and approachable. This realization gave her hope that people could be both successful and compassionate, and that genuine connections could exist despite differences in social standing. Her co-workers began to notice the change in her demeanor. They commented on her brighter smile, her increased confidence, and the energy she brought to the cafe. Even the regular customers seemed to respond to her differently, drawn to the warmth that now radiated from her presence. She realized that the effect of kindness was not limited to her alone. It extended outward, influencing the people around her in subtle but meaningful ways. The ripple of one person's genuine care could transform an entire environment, making it lighter and more welcoming. One day, he asked her about the hobbies she had once enjoyed, but abandoned over the years. She admitted she had loved painting but had given it up when life became overwhelming. He encouraged her to pick up her brushes again, not as a casual suggestion but as a gentle nudge toward reclaiming a part of herself. She felt a mix of excitement and fear, unsure if she could return to something she had neglected for so long. Yet his belief in her abilities instilled a quiet determination within her. She promised herself she would try, inspired by the confidence he had shown in her. She began to take small steps toward pursuing her passions. After her shifts at the cafe, she would set up a small corner in her apartment with paints and canvases. At first, her hands trembled with uncertainty, but as she painted, she felt a sense of freedom and expression she had long forgotten. The process was not about perfection or recognition. It was about reconnecting with herself, exploring her creativity and finding joy in the act of creation. Each brushstroke became a reminder that she had worth, talent, and the ability to shape her own life. He continued to visit the cafe regularly, noticing the subtle changes in her demeanor and expressing genuine interest in her progress. Their conversations expanded beyond daily pleasantries, delving into topics like dreams, aspirations, and personal growth. He shared stories of his own challenges, times when he had doubted himself, and the lessons he had learned from failure and perseverance. She listened with rapt attention, realizing that his guidance was not about giving her answers but about helping her see her own potential and empowering her to take steps forward. One rainy evening, he invited her for another walk outside the cafe. This time she didn't hesitate. Stepping into the cool, rain-scented air, she felt a sense of liberation and anticipation. They walked slowly, sharing stories of their pasts, hopes, and fears. He spoke of the loneliness he had experienced despite his success, and she realized that everyone carried burdens, regardless of status or wealth. Their conversation was a rare exchange of vulnerability, where two people from different worlds could meet as equals, sharing their truths without judgment. The walk left her feeling a renewed sense of purpose. She began to approach her work and life with a fresh perspective, recognizing that she had the power to create positive change in her own life. She started setting small goals, both personal and professional, and found joy in achieving them. The confidence she had gained through his encouragement and belief in her abilities allowed her to take risks she had previously avoided. She understood that personal growth was a journey, one that required patience, courage, and the support of those who truly saw her. Over time, she began to notice the subtle ways in which his presence had influenced her interactions with others. She listened more attentively to her coworkers, offered genuine compliments to regular customers, and approached her daily tasks with a sense of purpose and care. The kindness she had received from him had become a model for her own behavior, teaching her that even small gestures of recognition and respect could have a profound impact on others. She realized that she had the ability to create ripples of positivity in the world around her, just as he had done for her. As the weeks continued, their bond deepened into a quiet, unspoken trust. He never imposed his presence, never demanded her attention, but he remained a steady source of support and encouragement. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, the moments of genuine connection that made her feel seen and valued. She began to understand that meaningful relationships were built on mutual respect, empathy, and the willingness to truly listen and acknowledge one another. These exchanges, though simple, had a profound effect on her sense of self-worth and her perception of the world. One evening, after the cafe had closed, she sat by the window with a cup of tea, reflecting on the changes that had occurred in her life. She thought about the days when she had felt invisible, the long hours of unnoticed effort, and the quiet despair that had accompanied those feelings. Now she felt a sense of hope and possibility that was entirely new. The simple act of being seen and acknowledged had ignited a spark within her, a reminder that even in a world that often overlooked the quiet and the lonely, kindness could transform lives in profound ways. She realized that her journey was not just about her own growth, but about the impact she could have on others. Inspired by the generosity and empathy she had received, she began to extend the same care to those around her. Whether through a smile, a word of encouragement, or a small act of recognition, she discovered that she could make a difference in the lives of others, just as he had made a difference in hers. The realization filled her with a sense of purpose and fulfillment that she had never known before. As she walked home that night, the city lights reflecting off the wet streets, she felt a quiet sense of gratitude and optimism. She didn't know what the future held or if he would continue to visit the cafe, but she understood that her life had already been changed. The simple act of being noticed, the brief moments of genuine connection, had opened doors to a world of possibility and self-discovery. She felt stronger, more confident, and more capable of facing life with an open heart, knowing that kindness, when offered sincerely, had the power to illuminate even the darkest corners of existence. And with that understanding, she took her first steps into a new chapter of her life, carrying with her the lessons of empathy, connection, and the enduring impact of being truly seen. The days continued to flow with a rhythm that felt both familiar and new. She moved through the cafe with practiced efficiency, serving customers, wiping tables, and managing orders with a quiet grace. Yet beneath the routine there was a sense of anticipation, a subtle excitement that colored her every action. She had grown accustomed to the businessman's visits, but each encounter still carried a spark, a reminder that genuine connection could be found in the simplest of exchanges. One afternoon, when the cafe was quieter than usual, he arrived and greeted her with the same calm, encouraging smile that had become a comfort to her. He ordered his cappuccino and chose the table by the window. As was his habit, she brought the cup to him, noticing the thoughtful look in his eyes as he watched the rain streak across the glass. For a moment, the world outside seemed to pause, leaving only the quiet space between them, filled with the unspoken understanding of shared presence. He asked her about her week, not in a casual passing way, but with genuine interest. She shared her experiences, the small victories and minor setbacks, and he listened attentively, offering words of encouragement that felt like a balm to her weary spirit. She realized that his kindness was not fleeting or superficial. It was steady, consistent, and rooted in a deep understanding of what it meant to be human. It was rare to encounter someone who could listen without judgment, who could offer support without imposing their own expectations. As they talked, she felt a growing sense of ease and trust. She spoke more freely than she had with anyone in years, revealing hopes and fears she had long kept hidden. He responded with empathy, acknowledging her feelings and validating her experiences. It was a rare gift, this ability to be seen and heard without pretense. She began to understand that connection was not about words alone, but about presence, about the willingness to engage with another person's reality and offer genuine recognition. Over the following weeks, their conversations deepened. He shared stories of his own challenges, the loneliness that sometimes accompanied his success, and the lessons he had learned from failure and perseverance. She listened with rapt attention, absorbing not just his words but the quiet wisdom that underpinned them. She realized that his encouragement was not meant to guide her directly, but to empower her to see her own potential. Each encounter left her feeling stronger, more confident, and more capable of facing the uncertainties of her own life. She also noticed changes within herself that extended beyond her interactions with him. Her posture was more upright, her voice more assured, and her interactions with customers and coworkers more genuine. She had discovered that when one felt seen and valued, it was possible to extend that same recognition to others. The kindness she had received had become a lens through which she viewed the world, enabling her to appreciate small acts of connection and to respond to them with warmth and attentiveness. One evening, after a particularly busy day, he invited her for another walk outside the cafe. She accepted without hesitation, eager for the quiet moments they shared away from the hustle of daily life. The streets were wet from a recent rain, the air crisp and refreshing. They walked slowly, discussing dreams and ambitions, sharing thoughts that had been long buried under the weight of routine and expectation. He spoke of the importance of resilience, of finding strength in vulnerability, and of the quiet power of empathy. She listened, feeling a sense of liberation and clarity she hadn't experienced in years. Their walks became a regular part of their connection. Each one offered a space where she could explore her thoughts, voice her concerns, and reflect on her aspirations. He never imposed solutions or offered unsolicited advice. Instead, he provided a supportive presence that allowed her to navigate her own path. She realized that true mentorship and friendship were not about control or direction, but about providing space for growth, encouragement, and the affirmation of one's inherent worth. During these moments, she also began to notice the subtle ways in which he had influenced her outlook on life. She approached challenges with greater confidence, embraced opportunities she had previously shied away from, and allowed herself to dream more boldly. The sense of hope that had once seemed fragile had grown stronger, reinforced by the steady support and recognition she received. She understood that the small, consistent acts of kindness and attention could transform not just her sense of self, but also her approach to the world around her. One afternoon, as they sat by a quiet park bench during their walk, he asked her about her personal goals and the steps she had taken toward them. She spoke of her desire to explore creative pursuits, to reconnect with passions she had neglected, and to pursue a life that felt meaningful. He encouraged her to take deliberate steps, emphasizing the value of consistency, patience, and self-compassion. His words were not just advice, but an affirmation of her capacity to achieve what she set out to do. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a belief that her aspirations were valid and attainable. She began to take more intentional actions in her daily life. She set aside time each evening to focus on her creative interests, experimented with new skills, and sought out experiences that challenged her in positive ways. She discovered that the act of engaging with her passions brought a profound sense of fulfillment, reinforcing the lessons she had learned from their conversations. The support she had received from him had instilled a confidence that enabled her to navigate the complexities of her own life with grace and determination. Her co-workers noticed the change as well. She interacted with them more openly, shared ideas, and offered assistance without hesitation. The cafe, once a place of routine labor, had become a space where she could express herself, contribute meaningfully, and engage with others in a positive and constructive manner. The influence of his consistent kindness extended beyond their personal interactions, shaping the environment and the people within it. One evening, after a particularly reflective walk, she returned to her apartment with a sense of clarity and determination. She sat by the window, looking out at the city lights reflecting on the wet streets, and contemplated the journey she had undertaken. The experience had not only transformed her perception of herself, but had also reshaped her understanding of human connection. She realized that the impact of genuine kindness was profound and far-reaching, capable of inspiring growth, confidence, and the pursuit of meaningful goals. She began to document her thoughts, writing down reflections on her experiences, the lessons she had learned, and the aspirations she wished to pursue. The act of writing became a form of self-expression, a way to process her journey and solidify the changes she had undergone. It reinforced the idea that personal growth was an ongoing process, nurtured by both internal reflection and external support. As the weeks continued, their bond remained steady and unassuming. He never pressured her, never imposed expectations, but remained a source of encouragement and affirmation. She looked forward to their conversations, appreciating the consistency and reliability of his presence. She understood that meaningful relationships were built on trust, empathy, and the willingness to engage with one another authentically. These encounters, though simple in nature, had a profound impact on her life, shaping her outlook, her confidence, and her sense of purpose. The influence of his kindness extended beyond the moments they shared. She began to notice opportunities to extend the same care and attention to others in her daily life. Whether through a thoughtful word, a gesture of support, or attentive listening, she discovered that she could create meaningful connections that resonated deeply. The lessons she had learned from his presence became a guiding principle, shaping her interactions and reinforcing the importance of empathy and recognition in human relationships. One rainy evening, as she walked home from the cafe, she reflected on the journey she had undertaken. The path from feeling invisible and overlooked to experiencing genuine recognition and connection had been transformative. She realized that her sense of self-worth, her confidence, and her capacity to pursue meaningful goals had been nurtured through consistent, authentic kindness. The impact of being truly seen, acknowledged, and valued had changed her perspective, empowering her to navigate life with greater clarity, purpose, and resilience. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that personal growth required continued reflection, effort, and openness to connection. Yet she also recognized the profound importance of the moments she had shared with him, the small conversations, the walks, the quiet acknowledgments of her presence. These experiences had illuminated the power of empathy and genuine attention, demonstrating that even brief interactions, when rooted in sincerity, could create lasting and meaningful change. As she entered her apartment and settled by the window with a cup of tea, she felt a sense of peace and gratitude. The city outside glimmered with life, reflecting the transformation she felt within. She understood that her life had been reshaped not by grand gestures or dramatic events, but by the quiet, consistent acts of recognition and care that had shown her she was seen, valued, and capable. The journey of being truly noticed had become a foundation for her growth, inspiring her to approach each day with confidence, purpose, and an open heart. And with that understanding, she allowed herself to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead, knowing that her life had been irrevocably enriched by the simple, profound power of genuine kindness. The morning started quietly, with her waking to the soft light filtering through her curtains. The city outside seemed calm, almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the bustling energy of the cafe she would soon head to. Yet she felt a sense of anticipation as she prepared for the day. It wasn't just another shift. It felt like another chance to continue a journey that had quietly transformed her life. The memory of his words and the simple kindness he had shown her lingered in her mind, filling her with warmth and a quiet excitement. She walked to the cafe with her usual pace, but there was a lightness in her steps, a confidence that she hadn't felt before. Each street, each passing face felt more vivid, more connected, as if the world itself had begun to notice her in return. She entered the cafe and immediately got to work, greeting her coworkers with a genuine smile and tending to the morning rush with her usual care. The routine felt comforting, yet there was something different about it now. She no longer felt invisible or unnoticed. The small gestures she had come to appreciate in her interactions, the brief nods and polite thank yous, felt more meaningful because she had begun to see the value in every connection, no matter how small. As she moved behind the counter, she noticed him entering the cafe as if he had been waiting for her arrival. His presence, calm and reassuring, brought a subtle sense of calm over her. He greeted her with the familiar, warm smile, and she returned it with a lightness that surprised even her. Today, there was a quiet understanding between them, a sense that their connection had grown deeper without the need for words to explain it. He ordered his cappuccino and chose his usual seat by the window. The rain-slicked streets outside creating a gentle backdrop for the moments they were about to share. She carried his coffee to him, feeling the familiar flutter of excitement in her chest. He thanked her with a sincerity that never seemed to fade, and they began their conversation with the usual ease and openness. Over the weeks they had shared stories, dreams, and challenges, but today felt different. There was a quiet acknowledgement that something had shifted. The conversations that had once been light and tentative now flowed with confidence and trust, each word carrying weight and meaning. She spoke of the progress she had made in her own life, the steps she had taken to reconnect with her passions, and the small victories that had built her confidence. He listened, genuinely interested, offering encouragement that felt more like recognition than advice. As the day progressed, she realized how much her life had changed since he first walked into the cafe. She approached her work with more energy, engaged more fully with customers, and even found herself helping her coworkers in ways she hadn't before. The transformation was not sudden, nor was it dramatic, but it was steady and undeniable. She had begun to recognize her own worth, her ability to create meaningful connections, and the power of consistent, genuine kindness. The experiences she had shared with him had become a foundation upon which she could build her own confidence and pursue her goals with renewed determination. Later in the afternoon, he asked if she would like to take a walk, and she eagerly agreed. The city was alive with the soft sounds of evening, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional laughter of people passing by, the rhythmic patter of rain on the pavement. As they walked, he spoke of his own journey, the challenges he had faced despite the appearance of success, and the lessons he had learned from both triumphs and setbacks. She listened intently, realizing that even someone who seemed to have everything could experience doubt, loneliness, and uncertainty. It was a humbling reminder that human experience was universal, and that empathy and understanding were powerful tools in connecting with others. She shared her own reflections, the fears she had overcome, and the ways she had begun to take control of her life. He nodded, offering words of affirmation that made her feel seen and validated. They spoke of dreams that had once seemed out of reach, and he encouraged her to pursue them with the same patience and resilience she had demonstrated in her own progress. The conversation left her feeling energized, inspired, and confident that she could continue to grow, not just in her work at the cafe, but in her personal aspirations and creative pursuits. Over the following days, she found herself exploring new opportunities. She attended a local art workshop she had been hesitant to join, practiced her creative hobbies more consistently, and engaged in small but meaningful acts of kindness with her co-workers and customers. Each step reinforced the lessons she had learned from her encounters with him. That consistent effort, belief in oneself, and genuine connection could create profound changes in life. She discovered that the small victories, the completion of a painting, the encouragement of a coworker, the smile of a satisfied customer, were equally as meaningful as larger achievements. Her life, once filled with quiet resignation, had begun to feel purposeful and alive. One evening, as they sat together in the cafe after closing, he asked her about her long-term goals and aspirations. She spoke candidly, sharing her desire to expand her creative pursuits and find ways to connect with others through her work and personal projects. He listened attentively, offering insights not as directives but as gentle guidance, emphasizing the importance of patience, perseverance, and self-belief. His encouragement was empowering, not controlling, giving her the confidence to envision a future where her dreams were attainable and meaningful. Their relationship had evolved into a quiet, steady presence in each other's lives. It was not defined by grand gestures or dramatic events, but by consistent, genuine attention and understanding. She had come to trust him implicitly, knowing that his words and actions were rooted in sincerity and respect. The bond they shared had become a source of strength and motivation, reminding her that human connection, when nurtured with care and authenticity, could have lasting and transformative effects. As the weeks turned into months, she continued to grow both personally and professionally. Her confidence in the cafe improved her interactions, her creative endeavors flourished, and she began to approach life with a sense of agency and possibility she had never known. She had learned that being seen and valued was not merely about external acknowledgement, but about recognizing her own worth and allowing herself to embrace it fully. The consistent support she had received had taught her the importance of fostering similar connections with others, creating a ripple effect of kindness and understanding in her own sphere. One rainy evening, as they walked through the quiet streets together, she reflected on the journey she had undertaken. From feeling invisible and overlooked, she had moved toward a life filled with recognition, connection, and personal growth. The impact of his presence had been profound, offering not only encouragement but a model for the kind of interactions and relationships that could nurture confidence and self-worth. She realized that her life had been irrevocably changed, not by dramatic events but by steady, thoughtful, and genuine acts of attention and care. When they returned to the cafe, she felt a sense of completion and satisfaction. She had come to understand that her journey was ongoing, that growth required continued effort, reflection, and openness to new experiences. Yet she also recognized that she had the tools, the confidence, and the insight to navigate life with resilience and purpose. The lessons she had learned from him, the value of genuine kindness, the power of being seen, and the importance of pursuing personal goals, had become integral to her identity. As she closed up the cafe for the night, she paused for a moment, looking out the window at the glistening streets. The city felt alive and vibrant, reflecting the changes within her. She understood that life was filled with unexpected opportunities for connection and growth, and that even small acts of recognition could have profound, lasting effects. She felt gratitude for the journey she had undertaken, for the guidance and support she had received, and for the newfound sense of agency and purpose that now shaped her life. Walking home, she allowed herself to fully embrace the transformation she had experienced. The quiet moments, the meaningful conversations, and the consistent kindness had given her a foundation upon which to build a life filled with confidence, hope, and possibility. She understood that being truly seen and valued was not only a gift, but a catalyst for personal growth and empowerment. The journey from isolation to connection had been gradual but profound, leaving her stronger, more resilient, and ready to face the future with an open heart. That night, as she settled into her small apartment, she reflected on the extraordinary journey she had taken from feeling ignored and alone to being acknowledged and valued. The lessons she had learned would stay with her, shaping her interactions, her aspirations, and her understanding of the world. She had discovered that kindness, when genuine, could illuminate lives, foster growth, and create meaningful connections that transcended circumstance. And in that quiet moment, she allowed herself to feel a deep sense of peace and fulfillment, knowing that her life had been transformed in ways she had never imagined possible.